Hello, it's Mystic Maude. Thank you so much for joining me for this Libra new moon solar eclipse 2023 that will be occurring on October 14th, 2023 at 10:55 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So do adjust for your location on planet Earth because surely the time will change. Okay. Libra is a cardinal air sign. So air signs are all about our thoughts, the way we communicate, our mind, the processes of our mind, and like how we relate to one another through communication. And then cardinal signs are the initiated signs. All the cardinal signs mark the beginning of a season. So Aries is the beginning of spring, Cancer is the beginning of summer, Libra is the beginning of fall, and Capricorn is the beginning of winter. So there's a really strong initiative energy coming through with all of these signs. When we have a new moon in one of them, it's extra emphasized because new moons are the chance for a new initiative every month. The universe is giving us a seed to plant and tend to over the next 29 and a half days. That will come to fruition in 6 months when Libra becomes the full moon, or whatever the new moon is becomes the full moon. So during Aries season, when Libra becomes the full moon, that is when we will see like the changes that came through. This new moon in Libra is an opportunity for a fresh start in the way that you relate to other people. It's also a fresh start and restoring balance to any aspect of your lives too. I do think that relationships are especially being emphasized here, but Libra is also about beauty, equality, balance. So maybe you're taking a look around you and looking at your house and being like, oh, wow, I've accumulated a lot of things here. Maybe I need to restore the balance and aesthetic of the world around me, or maybe my bills are out of order, and accumulated and out of balance, like Libra is the scales, right? So finding and seeking whatever is out of balance in your life and implementing whatever you need to restore that balance, right? So again, I do think that the major themes of Libra have to do with our relationships with the other, especially one-on-one interactions. And it doesn't have to just be love, although the 7th house, which is what Libra is ruled, is about, does rule like marriages and, relationships, but it is really any one-on-one interaction that you have. It could be with the gas station attendant or the server at a restaurant, or, your employees or your bosses or your roommates or, acquaintances or, anyone really. So just keep that in mind as I'm going through this, because I do really think that our communication and our assumptions, our judgments about other people are really being called into question at this new moon. So because this new moon is coinciding with a solar eclipse and some other really major aspects, this lunation is providing us with a tremendously unique opportunity to break major cycles and lessons and behavior and pain that have been a barrier to love and connection we strive for with others and ourselves. So because breaking cycles is such a big deal, like it's taking an honest evaluation. It takes self-reflection and courage. If you aren't aware of what's wrong in your relationships and the part of you play in it, and you lack the courage to speak up, nothing's going to change, right? And so solar eclipses, think about this. Solar eclipses always occur on a new moon or a full moon, and they always come at least in pairs. If there's a solar eclipse on the new moon, there's going to be one on the full moon. So when that happens, like it's always on the moon's nodes too. So the south node and the north node of the moon. So this one being in Libra, opposite Aries, is really emphasizing our past. The moon's nodes, the south node is our past. The north node is our future, where we're going to, right? So this is like the past stuff that we need to slough off and get rid of, right? So keep that in mind. So taking an honest look at your relationships, like how are you communicating? Do you get triggered easily? It's important to be paying attention to like what is like getting in the way of you having the relationships you want, especially with what you're willing to take from other people. How much you're willing to give and what you are giving. So fortunately, there's a lot of aspects emphasizing analysis and communication in the stars right now. As I said, Libra is an air sign, and air signs represent mental energy, how we think, our ideas, our manners of communication, and what we think and how we express it, basically. So, second, this new moon is conjunct Mercury, the planet of thoughts and communications, right? So, third, Venus, which is the ruler of Libra and Taurus, is in Virgo, which is a Mercury ruled planet. So, incidentally, that makes Mercury and Venus in what's known as a mutual reception. A mutual reception occurs when two planets are in each other's rulerships. So, Venus is in Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is in Libra, ruled by Venus. So, that really lends extra emphasis on the energy signature of those two planets and how they relate to each other. You can look in your chart, maybe you have a mutual reception too. So I should also mention that if you have any planets at 22 degrees, they are making very specific aspects to this solar eclipse and the new moon, and they are going to be extra important and show you a little bit about what's going on in your own chart. And, I always suggest taking a look at your own birth chart and seeing where the new moon is occurring, which house especially, because that's the area of life in which all of this energy is being initiated and occurring. So wherever 22 degrees is in your chart is where 22 degrees of Libra, I should say, is where this new moon is occurring. And you are always welcome to hit me up for a reading or to understand what that means for you. So anywho, this is time to really consider the way we relate to others, especially our own barriers to love. Are we too controlling? Are we too accepting? Are we too quick to roll over and be like, okay, whatever you say? Or are we over emotional, like overly sensitive, like reacting to people too quickly, like, oh yeah, well, let me tell you how you're wrong, Are we being too quick to anger, too quick to cower, and too quick to blame, right? So where do our judgments, our intolerances, and need for control insulate us from cultivating lasting and meaningful relationships? Where does our preoccupation with our own needs, obliviousness to others' needs, our inconsideration, lack of sensitivity and awareness keep us from creating and sustaining relationships? And I'll tell you a quick story. So I was recently in a ceremony, a TP meeting, where I was sitting next to someone who was very strict about the way that he felt the meeting should be conducted. And in a TP meeting, we're sitting in circle, right? So we are across from people. And the person that was sitting across from us was like the most relaxed about the whole TP meeting, and like also a little naive to the etiquette and protocols that were being asked of him, or that he should have been following. So the whole meeting, the guy next to me, who is like obsessed with the other guy and just sitting there behind his feather fan, just being like, how can this go on? Like, how come no one's saying anything to this guy? And how dare he? And, blah, 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 and getting so worked up and so judgmental and so in trying to be in control of what this other person was doing. And it's like, he wasn't able to, we can't control other people. There's no point in getting worked up about something that we can't control. He was not feeling the beauty of the meeting and not present with the prayer because he was obsessing over how this other guy was not. So it was kind of ironic in that way, right? And then the other guy also was in his own world. Both of these people were in their own heads and in their own egos. The other guy was just being oblivious, not paying attention, not really seeing how other people were conducting themselves, and really acting kind of like a child, this grown man, and not comporting himself in the way that he should have, and also not following some pretty important rules. So even though he wasn't worried about what other people were doing, he was still in his own world, and he was being oblivious to the needs and wants of the culture around him. And so in that way, he was creating his own barrier to love. So the guy who was being intolerant and judgmental was creating an island out of himself, right? And also like not letting the beauty of the ceremony in, because he was obsessed with something that he really didn't have any control over. And it was like kind of none of his business anyway, right? And I really saw how the ways that I am judgmental and intolerant of others and how that prevents me from receiving love. And the other person was just being oblivious. So anyways, hopefully that was a helpful example. So again, where does our preoccupation with our own needs, obliviousness to others' needs, our inconsideration of what's going on around us and how we might be offending other people, lacking sensitivity and awareness, keeping us from sustaining relationships? But also, how are we trying to control other people? Real love is about acceptance. It's like, I love you how you are. I appreciate you for the expression of your individuality and your unique light. And if it's not someone that you love, you're in a relationship and you're trying to change them into something that you want, that is not love. That is not accepting them. Either they meet your needs enough and you can accept the ways in which you would have them be different, or it's time to say, I'm move on to the next thing. This is a time where we are learning what we are willing to accept in relationships, what we want, what we deserve, but it's also learning to accept and love others as they are, for who they are. And so we can try and help people become better, but we cannot force people to be different. Love is acceptance, right? And not trying to control. Another major aspect of this new moon is Mercury opposite Chiron. Chiron is the wounded healer. It's the area of our chart where we are in most need of healing, but also where we can, once we are healed, be teachers to others, teach that healing to others. This means that the area in ourselves in most in need of healing is likely to surface through our communication and interactions with others, which presents us with an opportunity to heal and to see clearly what we are ready to release, mend, or evolve. Also, Chiron is conjunct the north node of the moon. So it's all happening opposite the new moon and the eclipse. So really, the north node is where we're going to again, and the south node is what we're releasing. It's stuff from our past, right? And so the north node in Aries is about our will, what we want, who we are, doing things on our terms. It is willfulness. So when the Chiron in Aries next to the north node might be emphasizing either where we could be more willful or we are being too willful. And it's our wounding around our self-identity, like worrying about being liked or accepted by other people. So again, this is to see clearly like where our will or lack of will is keeping us from having the relationships that we really want. So we also have Lilith, the indicator of our deepest rejection and rage, conjunct Venus, the planet of love and attraction. This is telling us that now is a time to look deeply into the abyss of our own hearts and try to locate the bottom. What's beneath it all? What's beneath all this anger, this rage, this fear, the loss? Ask how fear of rejection and loss play a role in your relationships. Are we afraid of that people will leave us once they get to know the real us? Are we afraid of being alone, unliked, being treated poorly by those we love? Again, how do we control and how do we use control and fear to push people away? It's important to remember that if we want to be accepted and loved by others, we must first accept and love ourselves. Again, if we want to be accepted and loved by others, we must first accept and love ourselves. That's that north node in Aries talking. We need a balance. We need to balance a healthy love and understanding of ourselves with compassion and understanding and acceptance of others, however they are choosing to express, and not lean too much in either direction, right? Libra is about balance after all. So speaking of the moon's nodes, this new moon is conjunct the south node, which is an indicator, as I said, of our past, where we're coming from, ingrained in automatic habits. It is asking us to consider our past. How were relationships modeled for us as we grew up? How did your caregivers treat each other? How did your caregivers treat other people? Service workers, friends, bosses, employees, strangers, acquaintances, people with opposing beliefs, faiths, opinions. How did they treat these people? How did these patterns show up in your own life now? So, really, this new moon all comes down to compassion, understanding, healthy communication, and service. These values are what is most needing to be cultivated in the collective right now and are the basis of peace, love, and unity, which are the ideals of Libra. So this new moon is occurring at 21 degrees, 7 minutes of Libra, as I said. So the Sabian symbol for this degree point, which we round up to 22 degrees of Libra, is a child giving birds a drink at the fountain. Again, a child giving birds a drink at the fountain. So this imagery is suggestive of purity and innocence through the symbols of a child, bird, and water. All of those things have a connotation of purity, innocence, being unpolluted by the contaminations of life that we get when we're influenced and grow older, right? So the water is a symbol of life. It is offered freely without expectation or for any reason beyond compassion and a desire to be of service. And the bird, there's a connotation of service in that child is giving water to a bird, and a bird is not going to be able to just immediately return the favor. What's a bird going to do for the child? It's water. The help is given freely, right? Without expectation or a desire to get something in return, right? The child doesn't care what political party or what side of the war this bird was on, or which race or gender it is, whether it's a man or a woman. It just gives freely and compulsory to help the bird, right? So this symbol shows us that what we need right now is to strive to polish our hearts, to wipe off the grime of hurt, fear, disappointment, judgment, to return to that place of love, that childlike place that doesn't see how it was hurt in this way or in that way. It has the wisdom, we have the wisdom, but returning to that place of openness, curiosity. Why is someone being curious as to why someone's acting a certain way or what their needs are, instead of just assuming or creating stories in your mind. Really distinguishing fact from fiction. What do I actually know and what do I think I know? And just because you might be right about what you think, it's important to give people the benefit of the doubt. We really lack that. Giving people the benefit of the doubt is something that we don't always do, right? And some people out of balance Libra might be giving people too much leeway, making excuses for why people are being terrible to them. Just because someone's being terrible doesn't mean we need to react, and it doesn't mean we need to accept it. We can be kind and peaceful and just be like, no, thank you, right? So real love is accepting people for who they are, however they are, and respecting their autonomy, however they want to live their lives, not worrying about it, And real love is also the hardest thing to do because it requires that we offer love even in the face of seething anger. It doesn't mean that we need to take abuse, as I said. It just means that we find ourselves at odds to see beyond the harsh words to the pain and the hurt and the need behind them, instead of just straight up reacting. For example, take Tom and Elizabeth. Maybe Tom comes into the room that Elizabeth's in one day, and Elizabeth's like, Tom, you never clean up after yourself. You're such a slob. Super mean, right? Coming at him really aggressively, making judgments, making value assumptions about him, that she knows what's clean and he doesn't, and really just not coming at things in a nice way. And Tom can either be like, well, Elizabeth, you blah, 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 or this or that. And then they just get into a fight, and it's just the animosity increases, right? Or Tom can be like, oh, Elizabeth, I hear that you have a need for more order and aesthetic in the house right now. Like, let's talk about how we can meet that need. Or maybe there's something beneath her saying that has nothing to do about it. But if we come at each other from a place of trying to understand each other better, then that's where love can live and thrive, and that's where relationships become better, right? So I highly, 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 highly recommend um, Marshall Rosenberg's Nonviolent Communication. It's a book, but there's tons of videos online. I especially like the San Francisco workshop he did some years ago. He's brilliant. He's a genius. It really helps us to separate our stories from and opinions from what are facts. What do we really know about the situation? And to learn to hear people for what their needs and wants are. Marshall Rosenberg says that anger is an unfortunate expression of unmet needs and wants. And we just haven't learned how to talk to each other in a way that's like loving and caring for one another, right? Okay, moving on. Venus, the ruler of Libra and the planet of love and values, is in Virgo, as I said, the sign of purification, integration, analysis, and service. And so it's really helping us strive for these ideals. It's helping to be more service-minded, to be more considerate of other people, be more open. It's also purifying our own hearts, purifying our own thoughts and minds. Like when we make stories up, when we make judgments, when we're intolerant of other people for what they're wearing or whatever, doing things differently than us. We are not the bosses of of like what is stylish, what people should be doing, what knives people need to use to cut onions, like those are just like what our preferences are, so to say that someone's like, oh my god, like look at that person's like shoes, those are so ugly, like that's mean and superficial. And like, well, who are you to say what looks good and what doesn't? That's like an out of control Aries, if that makes sense, and that's just one example. But like many ways you find yourself thinking the words like I would never, or oh my god, look at that, or like feeling icky about what other people are doing. And people do icky things too, but it doesn't mean that you need to respond to them or be cruel. Focus on purifying your own heart, your own thoughts, your own words, and speak and think in the language of love. Look deeply at the parts of yourselves that need to be cleared of that fear and anxiety and worthlessness, right? Venus is also opposite Saturn, which is either a reality check, showing us through challenges or what isn't working. So like you might be feeling challenged in your relationships or, by other people, or you might be even witnessing other people's challenges that's teaching you a lesson, right? So we see clearly what we no longer want or need or are no longer willing to take in relationships, and how we are ready to step up and evolve into what we are really wanting. We're really showing like what we're ready for. Like, oh, you know what? I'm no longer willing to accept that, in my life, or I'm willing to be more accepting, right? So it's all about like rebalancing ourselves so that we can come to a place of endurance and sustaining our meaningful relationships. We all want that connection, right? It's like, how do we create and sustain them? And it all depends on whether this Venus opposite Saturn is going to be a challenge or something like an enduring relationship that comes in through that solar eclipse. It all depends on where we are at with our emotional intelligence. So to sum it all up, there's a lot of information here. This new moon is a time to consider what attitudes, communication styles, habits, people, things are needing to be adopted or released or mended, or all three, because we have many different ways that this is going to show up in our lives in order to enhance and improve our one-on-one connections. This solar eclipse is like a portal, removing and adding people and situations in your life to help you level up in your relationships. Wherever this energy is presenting in your chart is where the Libra themes of relating, love, harmony and beauty are being activated in your own chart, and a new intention is being seeded. I hope this was helpful. If it was, please let me know in your comments. Like, share with your friends, consider a donation or book a reading with me, a new moon reading if you're interested to see like what is being activated in your chart and how can you harness this energy to make big and lasting changes in your own life, or to pick tarot cards about what is being released, what's emerging, what needs to be embraced. What do you aspire to this month? What helps you and what gets in the way of your evolution? Whatever. Hit me up. My Instagram is at mystic_maude. That's MAUDE. I also have a website. It's mysticmaude.com. I will put those in the notes. I do have a TikTok too, I guess, that I update sometimes. I'm a millennial. Anyway, so again, I really appreciate your support. If you share with your friends, if you make a donation, if you book a reading with me, this is what I love to do and talk about. And it would help me to feel like I'm doing something helpful. So anyway, I appreciate your support. Happy new moon and solar eclipse, everyone.